Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters. I'm your host, Mitch. Glad to have you here. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about Commander on a budget. Today's episode is going to be Commander Quick Take. On episodes like these, I give you my initial take on a newly spoiled Commander from an upcoming set. I'm going to talk about a potential direction to take that Commander and possible cards to use for that build. I'll also go over some possible upgrades and similar Commanders to this one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. And while you're at it, subscribe and review our podcast as well. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. But before we really jump into this, I just want to give a quick disclaimer. On episodes like these, it is just an initial quick take. This Commander is as new to me as it is to you. And because of that, I don't have a finalized deck built for this Commander yet. So the direction that I talk about today might not be the same one that I choose for a deck tech. And because of that, some of the cards that I'm going to mention might not be in that deck either. Alright, now that we're on the same page, let's get into it. Today's Commander Quick Take is on Klothys, whatever, God of Destiny. For this video's purposes, I'm just going to refer to her as the God of Destiny because I have no idea how to pronounce her name. She's a 4/5 indestructible god that costs 1 red-green. She has as long as your devotion to red and green is less than 7, she isn't a creature. And at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, you exile target card from a graveyard. If it was a land card, you add red or green, otherwise you gain 2 life and she deals 2 damage to each opponent. So there's actually quite a few things going on with this new girl god. The only new god spoiled up to this point costs 6 mana, but this one only costs 3. At 3 mana, you can get her out very quickly and she can have an impact right away. Depending on what's in graveyards and what you need, she can either ramp you or she can help you deal damage to each opponent and then gain you 2 life. And that targeted removal for graveyards isn't something to scoff at either. She can definitely throw a wrench into a graveyard-centric or reanimator deck. Now, ramping by 1 is nice, but I think the damage part is the thing that you need to focus on here. With the damage and life gain, if all 3 opponents are in play, it's technically an 8-point swing. And for a 3 mana indestructible enchantment creature god, I think that's a very good deal. So my initial take on this Commander is that the best way to build around it is probably a group slug deck. With a deck like that, you pretty much just want to light the world on fire and hope everyone else burns before you do. In a group slug deck, you're going to be dealing out massive amounts of damage to everyone, including yourself. The God of Destiny helps us out in that regard with her non-symmetrical effect. Not only is she just dealing damage to opponents, but she's also gaining us life. Also, as an indestructible enchantment, she's very hard to deal with. With all the enchantments that we're going to be running with this deck, she's probably going to become a creature at a certain point, but still, as an indestructible creature, she's still going to be hard to take out. Regardless, let's go over some cards to consider for this build. First up, we're going to want plenty of ways just to deal a ton of damage throughout the game. First up, there's Mana Barbs, which is an enchantment for 3 and a red. It says whenever a player taps a land for mana, Mana Barbs deals 1 damage to that player. This is a pretty brutal card that's not going to make you a lot of friends. It's going to punish everyone for doing what they pretty much have to do anyways. A punishing effect like this is really hard to get around and can do a lot of work for us throughout the game. Yes, it's going to deal damage to us, but we are willing to take that hit. A similar card that we only get because we're in Gruul is Overabundance. It's an enchantment for 1 red-green, and it says whenever a player taps a land for mana, that player adds 1 mana of any type that land produced, and Overabundance deals 1 damage to that player. So essentially it's a Mana Barbs that costs 1 less and it doubles up everyone's mana. With a group slug deck, we're already going to be trying to make this game end quickly. This card will help speed up the process through both damage and mana. Yes, our opponents will be able to cast things faster, but so will we. And we're also going to be running some non-symmetrical damage effects like Harsh Mentor. It's a 2/2 human cleric for 1 and a red and says whenever an opponent activates an ability of an artifact, creature, or land on the battlefield, if it isn't a mana ability, Harsh Mentor deals 2 damage to that player. With this deck, we're going to be making our opponents make a lot of tough decisions. The more ways that we have to punish them, the better, and the quicker we can take them out. But we're also going to be running plenty of ways to speed up the process. For example, Curse of Bloodletting is an Aura Curse that costs 3 red. It says if a source would deal damage to an enchanted player, it deals double that damage to that player instead. So now all of our effects, including our commander, are going to hit them for twice as much. This also doubles up our opponent's damage on them as well. So if they happen to be ahead, they can definitely be a target for everyone to take out. We're also going to be running a similar but symmetrical effect like Dictator of the Twin Gods. It's an enchantment with flash that costs 3 red and says if a source would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage to that permanent or player instead. So this is going to double up damage to everything, including ourselves. Obviously in this deck though, that's a price we're willing to pay. Also, because this has flash, we can cast it when it's most opportune for us. So this can be a surprise finisher right before our turn, giving us the reach that we need to take everyone out. A similar but non-symmetrical effect comes from Ingress Marauders. Ingress Marauders is a 4/4 human pirate that costs 5 red. It says if a sorcerer you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, deals double that damage to that permanent or player instead. So this is going to double up all the damage that we deal out but not help our opponents at all. And the best part about these doubling effects is that they stack. So damage can double and double again and again depending on how many we have out. This can make the game end very quickly, especially if we're set up correctly. Now, enchantments like these are great because they're hard to deal with, but outside of enchantments, we're going to have plenty of other ways to deal damage. One of those will be a spell like Earthquake. It's a sorcery for X and a red, and it says, Earthquake deals X damage to each creature without flying and each player. So this can help us take out all the non-flying creatures and deal damage to each player. Keep in mind that our commander is indestructible, so even if she's a creature, she's going to be fine. Outside of being a great board wipe, this can also be a fantastic finisher as well. Another option for us is going to be something like Arc Bond. It's an instant for 2 and a red, and it says choose target creature. Whenever that creature is dealt damage this turn, it deals that much damage to each other creature and each player. An instant speed board wipe that can wipe out pretty much everything for just 3 mana is huge. Now this card is somewhat conditional, but there are going to be plenty of opportunities to use it. Even a simple spell like Inferno can come in huge for this deck. It's an instant for 5 red, and it deals 6 damage to each creature and each player. 6 damage will be enough to take out most things, but again, our commander is going to be fine. So again, on top of all those continuous damage effects, it's nice to have these extra effects just to deal out some extra damage. For the most part, our opponent's decks won't be built to handle this amount of damage this quickly. But our deck will be ready for it in a couple of ways. Our commander does gain us life, but we've got some other cards to help us out as well. Urza's Armor might not seem like a lot at first, but it can be huge for this deck. It's an artifact that costs 6, and it says if a sorcerer deal damage to you, prevent 1 of that damage. With all those continuous damage effects that we have, this can save us a ton of life throughout the game. And keep in mind that this prevents damage from opponent sources as well. A token deck might not be hitting nearly as hard when this is in play. And outside of our commander, we can have other effective ways to gain life like Sun Droplet. It's an artifact that costs 2 and says whenever you dealt damage, put that many charge counters on Sun Droplet. And at the beginning of each upkeep, you may remove a charge counter from Sun Droplet. If you do, you gain 1 life. So essentially for just 2 mana, we're going to be gaining 1 life each turn. With just 1 turn around the table, that's going to be a total of 4 life. And then with our commander's 2 life that we're gaining from her, that's going to be 6 life each turn cycle. Now 6 life isn't a ton, but that can really add up throughout the game. Padding our life total like that can keep us alive while taking our opponents out. And finally, because our commander is going to become a creature, something like Snake Umber can come in huge. It's an aura for 2 and a green, and it says enchant a creature gets +1/+1 and has whenever this creature deals damage to an opponent, you may draw a card, and it has Totem Armor. Because our commander is going to be dealing 2 damage to each opponent, this will draw us 3 cards. So essentially on each of our turns, we get 3 extra cards to play with because our commander is putting out that damage. This can really put us ahead and help us finish our opponents off. Now there are a ton of budget cards like this one, they're going to be fantastic in this deck. But now let's go through some potential upgrades to consider as well. First up, there's Pyrohemia, which comes in at $3.46. It's an enchantment for 2 red, and it says at the beginning of the end step, if no creatures on the battlefield, sacrifice Pyrohemia. By paying a red, Pyrohemia deals 1 damage to each creature and each player. So if our commander is a creature, because she's indestructible, we're probably not going to have any trouble keeping this in play. We can use this to dish out a ton of damage to creatures and to players throughout the game. With this in play, it's going to be very hard for our opponents to keep any creature on the board and for them to stay alive. Another upgrade to consider is Citadel of Pain. Currently it's $3.26, and it's an enchantment that costs 2 and a red. It says at the beginning of each player's end step, Citadel of Pain deals X damage to that player, where X is the number of untapped lands they control. So this card punishes players for wanting to keep mana up. It can be fantastic against control strategies, and it also works really great with things like mana barbs. Next up, there's Furnace of Wrath, which comes in at $2.82. It's an enchantment for 1 red, and it says if a sorcerer deal damage to a creature or player, deals double that damage to that creature or player instead. So essentially this is another way to double up damage, and we want as many of those effects as we can have in this deck. Another fantastic upgrade to consider is Torbrand Thane of Red Fel, which comes in at $2.31. It's a 2/4 dwarf noble that costs 1 red, and it says if a red source you control would deal damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals that much damage +2 instead. So again, this is a non-symmetrical effect that can really speed things up. Another great effect comes with Fiendish Duo, which comes in at $9.49. It's a 5/5 devil with first strike that costs 4 red. It says if a source would deal damage to an opponent, it deals double that damage to that player instead. So this doubles up damage on everything but only on opponents. And finally, a card like Well of Lost Dreams can be a great upgrade too. It's an artifact for 4 and it currently costs $2.96. It says whenever you gain life, you may pay X, where X is less than or equal to the amount of life you gained. If you do, draw X cards. So basically with that life we gain from our commander, if we just pay 2, we're drawing 2 cards. Now that we've gone through upgrades, let's take a look at some similar commanders to compare to. The first one that comes to mind is Mogis, God of Slaughter. Mogis is the original group slug commander god, but it does in a somewhat different way. Mogis is going to give opponents an option. They can either sacrifice a creature or take 2 damage. The God of Destiny gives them no such choice. The main base of each of these decks is going to be red, but there are going to be some subtle changes with that green instead of black. Another commander that can be used for a group slug deck is Torbrand. We mentioned it before, but he basically increases damage output for your red sources. Next up, there's Zozu the Punisher, who definitely lives up to his name. He has whenever a land enters the battlefield, Zozu the Punisher deals 2 damage to that land's controller. In my opinion, the God of Destiny is going to be much more reliable. First up, she's indestructible, so she's harder to take out. And also, her damage is probably going to be more consistent as well. There aren't too many group slug commanders out there, but another one that can be used as one is Neheb the Eternal. It has at the beginning of your post-combat main phase, add red to your mana pool for each 1 life your opponents have lost this turn. So it basically gives you a ton of temporary ramp for putting out a ton of damage. When it comes to Gruul, there pretty much hasn't been one up to this point, but Rurik Thor the Unbound is probably the closest you can get to group slug. It says whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, Rurik Thor deals 6 damage to that player. Now with this kind of a deck, you're probably going to be focusing more on creatures, so that definitely limits your options. The God of Destiny doesn't have those kinds of limitations. She seems like a pretty interesting commander to build around and can make for an effective group slug commander. And if you haven't seen it yet, make sure you check out my most recent quick take here. And with that, this show is coming to a close. So in the comments below, give me your take on this newly spoiled commander. Would you take it in a similar direction or in a completely different one? And make sure you're following us on social media for more updates and sneak peeks on future episodes. Again, a huge thank you to my patrons who help make this show possible. I truly couldn't do any of this without your support. If you want to support this channel directly, consider becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, including being able to vote on future commanders for deck techs. There are even tiers where you get your own personalized deck tech dedicated to you. You can check out all the Patreon tiers and rewards at patreon.com/commandersquarters. If you haven't already, make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about budget commander. So while you're at it, go ahead and check out some of our other types of episodes. And with that, I'm out of here. Thanks again and have a good one.